Awesome. I'd like to welcome everyone today. My name is Stuart Blumenthal with Ethos Systems, and today we're going to be going over the 1099 year-end training and just go over how to handle 1099s and handle some of your year-end processing. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to email me. We're also just for the presentations from the presentation, it should last about 30 to 45 minutes. The phone lines are muted, and if anyone has any questions, please use the questions feature within the GoToWebinar. If you want a copy of this presentation, just put your email address in there, and I'll make sure that we get this sent out to you a little bit later today. So without any further ado, let's talk about year-end processing. Everyone gets very excited about it, but in all essence, you do this every month anyway, except for the 1099s, but let's go through what you should be doing on a month-end basis or a year-end basis with each of the different modules. So for closing the books, we always recommend you close the books for a module. You want to make sure that everything is reconciled for the subsidiary modules. So going through each of the modules, first of all, for those who are doing purchasing, you want to make sure that you reconcile your purchases clearing or your inventory payables account. For those who don't know what that is, what that means is that if you have inventory set, if you're using the inventory module, when you receive in the goods, you usually debit inventory, credit purchases clearing because you have not yet received that invoice. Then when you receive in the invoice, you debit purchases clearing and hit accounts payable at that point. So it's like kind of holding between the receipt of the goods or the accrual at that point versus the actual invoice. And those, again, with purchasing of items, you want to make sure you reconcile that. Also, highly recommend cleaning up and reconciling all your open purchase orders and commitments. It is crazy how many times you see people out there with commitments or purchase orders out there 2, 3, 4 years old. Clean them up. Make a rule at this point here. Clean them up. If you're not going to receive stuff from 2022, this is a great time to clean up all your old purchase orders at that point. The best way of handling that, if you're going to close them out, is make sure you have a transaction definition set up for closeouts. If you have any problems with that, please feel free to contact our support. They'll help you set up a transaction definition that will help you close out your purchase orders. Also look at your open sales orders, open order entries, any open contracts that haven't been closed out. Again, this is the time to clean those out at the end of the year. Inventory control, for those, again, who are using inventory control, make sure you do your physical count on your items. Make sure you look at the valuation report. And again, most importantly, compare that to your general ledger. You want to make sure your inventory balance sheet account balance matches your valuation report for audit purposes. And again, what I would recommend doing is printing out those two reports, saving them within Sage Intacct, or printing them out as a PDF and making sure you've got those documented within the system. Also, make sure you review your WIP at that point. Now, again, you can run your WIP as of a specific date, but highly recommend reviewing the WIP, making sure it's all correct, making sure all your costs are updated, making sure all of your contract amount, all your costs, what you've been billed, all that's been in the system, so you have an accurate WIP at the end of the year, because you know your auditors, your accounting firm is going to need that as well. Another thing that I always like to clean up at the end of this year is verify all expenses and timesheets have been posted. People have a habit of going in there and creating a draft one and not submitting it. They might have started an expense sheet and again, not submitted it. This is a good time of just getting this all cleaned up within the system. So again, highly recommend doing that. From a cash management, make sure you do your bank and credit card reconciliations. We did a webinar previously on how to handle bank feeds to help automate this process. You can see that up on our YouTube video, but this is the time you're going to make sure that you get your bank and your credit card reconciliations complete as well. And then the last two that are near and dear to our heart, we get more calls on this on a constant basis, is make sure your AR ledger or aging ties to the general ledger, and make sure your AP aging ties to the general ledger. Now, a lot of clients will say, hey, I've never looked at it, and I'm going to now run these and see if they match. And guess what? They probably will not match, even though I want to say they will. If you have never compared those two against each other, please, make sure that they do. The first time this happens, there's not a lot you can really do. Your AP ledger or your AR ledger are pretty much the holy grail on that. They have all your information at that point. So that's really what your numbers should be in the general ledger. So it might be based upon an incorrect posting. We always recommend people not posting directly to AP or AR to prevent this from happening. It might have been a setup issue. It might have been just a date issue. So those are things to look at that might be causing those two to be out of balance. Keep in mind that when you run the AR ledger or the AP ledger, you don't want to do it based upon document date. You want to make sure you do this based upon the GL posting date. That is the best thing to do. So that way, that's going to tie to the general ledger at that point, and now your subsidiary modules, your AR, your AP match the general ledger. And again, make sure you print that off, PDF that, so that when your auditors ask it, there you go at that point. Obviously, you can also run it as of a certain date in the past, but I always just recommend having a hard copy associated to it. The modules that require closing are the following. So time and expense, cash management, accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and general ledger. This can be done from the entity level or from the top level. So if you do it from the top level, you're going to put in the entity. If you do it from the entity level, then it will fill in the entity for you automatically. Now, you can create entity groups that combine them together. That's something that you can do. I'm not a huge fan of that personally, but it is a way of that if you have a lot of entities, you want to close them all together, you can create something called an entity group that does that. And you don't need to close the general ledger at the same time as the other modules. So to me, why do you close out the modules? Well, it's simple. It's to prevent people from posting in the past. You're trying to write the accounting system in stone. So you can always reopen it. You can always go back and reopen it, make an adjusting entry, and then close it again. The system closes basically behind the scenes. So like, for example, the rolling of retained earnings and stuff like that happens automatically. So what you're really just doing is locking down the periods at that point. If you have not locked down periods in a long time, you can go, you can do a from and to date, but lock down, like for example, if you have not locked down 2022 at this point here, or even pretty much half of 2023, I would recommend getting that done as soon as possible, especially during this process here. Get all that cleaned up. So we kind of already went through this. I kind of hit some of these, but closing the period prevents users from posting transactions to the wrong period, plain and simple. The books can be reopened. So off the menu, you'll see closed books, and then you'll have the famous open books. So you can open the book anytime. Unlike other systems, you don't need to have everyone out of the system. There's no backup that you're going to do at that point. So, so you can you can do it anytime when everyone's in the system. As we mentioned, if your general ledger doesn't match your subsidiary ledgers, turn off this disallow direct posting. Now, some of this times you might go, well, why is that unchecked? That might have been unchecked, especially during data migration of your system. When we posted some of your AR entries from your historical system or your AP system, we might have hit journal entries directly during migration. So this is a time to kind of review that at this point here. The ones that we highly recommend or disallow direct posting are accounts receivable, accounts payable, and inventory. Those are the three main ones. And the other thing that we always do is make sure security sets so only one person has access to this. Again, this is the best time of the year, besides the holidays, to look at your security, making sure that people are not getting into areas of the system they should not. Are they going into configuration? Are they able to go and set up new GL accounts? Are they able to make changes? Things like that. This is a good time to lock down that system for next year and make sure that people are not doing things they should not be doing in the system. Make sure we don't have any questions here. Nope, no questions so far. So the next thing you want to do is that most of you are using standard reporting periods. Some of you, a few of you on this call are using custom reporting periods. And you will be able to see that based upon your setup, but I would say most of you are using standard. What you want to do is make sure that your 2024 reporting periods have been set up in the system. This is where you're going to set up your month ends, your quarters, and then also any of your budgeting as well in the system. Now, if you don't set these up, it's not a big deal. You can always set them up later, but it just makes your reporting a lot easier. Through the import tools, you can actually have it create the periods automatically if you want. There's a little trick on that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but there is a way of having it create them automatically. We do not recommend putting this out way far in advance. Like, it's not worth going all the way through 2029, because then when you do a lookup of your reports, you're going to have to scroll through multiple years. So again, don't go way far out. Just set up 2024, basically. Any questions on month end before we start diving into 1099s? Either no one's paying attention or silence is golden at this point here. So let's start talking about 1099s. So highly recommend that you guys start reviewing these today. Your 1099s are due at the end of January 31st, 2023. So we want to make sure that you have those sent out and sent out ahead of time, get this done and not waiting to the last minute. Our support queue is usually very backed up in January for people with questions and with normal processes. So please keep in mind that the sooner you do this, the better off you're going to be. The first thing that you want to do is make sure all your vendors are set correctly. If you went through this last year, hopefully you've not added a lot of vendors and you've been taking care of this throughout the year. But if you haven't, please make sure that all new vendors are set up correctly. First of all, making sure that if you look at in my system here, under the additional information, we have their taxpayer ID number, that's going to be needed. Their 1099 name, if it's printed, if it's different, and then choose the right form. So what's going to happen is you're going to click on this little link there, and it's going to bring up the right form. So there's a few forms out there. There's the 1099 miscellaneous, which is basically gone away. That's for other things nowadays, like legal fees and stuff like that. The miscellaneous income is no longer there at this point here. So if those who printed them year after year, that's the new 1099 NEC form. If you're doing any type of interest or any type of dividends, I don't think anyone's a bank here, but if you're doing any type of interest or dividends, those are being the 1099 interest or dividend boxes at that point. So, and you'll see that when you're creating a new vendor, you'll see the 1099 eligible, but once saved, you'll see the normal 1099 fields at that point. And then you can also, under the contact list out a 1099 contact. So under the third tab, there is a 1099 contact. So again, make sure you have this information set right on the vendor. Otherwise, you won't be able to collect the information when you're entering a bill in the system. When you go into the form, what it's going to ask you, or that hyperlink, it's going to ask you what's the form name, what's the box that should be going to, and what is the initial value. This screen here is great for those that have went through a mid-year conversion, or they don't want to update a bunch of bills and check the 1099 box. Here you can come in here and just override the amounts that are going to show up on your system. And it's not a true override. What it's going to do is that it's going to take this information plus any bills that have 1099 checked, and most importantly, a check has been cut. Those will then show up on your 1099 totals as the totals on the 1099. So this again, screen allows you to enter in beginning balances. It allows you also to reduce amounts. So for example, if say that there's a bill that came in that was not subject to 1099 for some reason, instead of going back through and trying to adjust it, you could actually make these amounts negative here, and that will reduce the amount of 1099s, the 1099 amount that's reported. And again, the most important thing, 1099s are a cash basis. So what does that mean? If you put a bill in the system and you mark the box saying it's 1099, that line is subject to 1099s, that will not show up on the 1099s until the check is cut. That's when it actually triggers the amounts, updates the amounts. So again, it's based upon check, not based upon bill. And that's regardless if you're using cash basis accounting or accrual based accounting within Sage Intacct. It's always based upon the check getting cut. If you have set up a vendor incorrectly, when you select the change the form, it will ask you, what do you want to do? Do you want to update all transactions for this vendor to based upon the modified 1099 information, all current year and previous year, or do not update the previous transactions? Now, personally, I would not change previous years. You're only focused really on the current year, but keep in mind this process only updates transactions already tagged for 1099 treatment and does not update non-1099 transactions. So if the transaction was not marked as 1099able in accounts payable or purchasing, this will not do anything. And so people are like, hey, I made the change, this box came up and my stuff is not it's not updated. Well, you did not update the box saying this line is subject to 1099s when you entered a bill in the system. So therefore, again, make sure that you go back through, you calculate what your totals should be and bring in your beginning balances. One other thing, remember that your employees are also your employees can be set up as 1099. So when you go into, so if you have your vendors set up in the vendor screen, which they're supposed to, and your employees set up in the employee screen, you can go into the employee screen, click on the form 1099 and get that information there. So this is again great for those that you set up a subcontractor as a as an employee in the system. You can do that. You might do that for time and expenses, things like that. So again, so employees can also be subject to 1099s. So the first thing is get your vendors cleaned up. Make sure they're right. Get that done early. Second of all, start looking at your history. Again, mid-year conversions. Make sure you get in touch with our consultant, get in touch with me. We'll make sure the consultants can broaden your historical 1099 balances. What will the Sage produce? So first of all, it's under the menu options. So if you go under all, other accounts payable, all, you'll see in the lower left-hand corner, you have a couple different options. You can print your 1099 form. It will print your 1099, 1096, which is the kind of the document transmittal of all your 1099s together. You can print out a 1099 report over here on the right-hand side that gives you all the details. And then you can do the file export. This is how you file electronically with to the IRS. And we'll go into that in a moment. This screen is from last year, but it still applies. You won't see this tax bandits up here, but what you'll see is that the 1099 screen enables you to create a file that it can be sent to a third-party electronic service. And what Sage uses tax bandits, and I'll go into that in a second. The IRS requires that you file electronically if you have over 250 vendors that need to be paid out. Now that is 250 from one EIN, from one federal ID number. So if you have 40 different companies and you're only issuing out 40 different 1099s from each one of those, then you don't have to do it electronically. You can just print out the paper yourself. But for all one legal entity, then you have to do it if you have more than 250. So be careful about that. And again, we partnered with Tax Bandit, so let's go into that a little bit. Since Tax Bandits was fairly new last year, and I think a majority of you did not use it because it was just getting rolled out, what you want to do is make sure you go into accounts payable setup options, and under the 1099, you'll kind of scroll down. You'll have a box that says enable 1099 flag override, that's probably checked. Enable 1099 forms and box override, that's probably checked. And then there's a third box that says enable 1099 e-filing powered by Tax Bandits. If this is grayed out, that means you have not turned on Sage Cloud Services. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go over into your subscriptions and turn on Sage Cloud Services. That usually takes a few minutes. I've seen it take up to an hour to subscribe to that. But what you'll do is you'll subscribe to Sage Cloud Services. You'll come back into here, and then this enable 1099 e-filing by Tax Bandits will become checked at that point. And then that will allow you to process your 1099s electronically with 10 Tax Bandits. What is the advantage of this? Basically, it's going to transmit this from Intacct to Tax Bandits automatically, and they will do all of your 1099 filing for you, and I'll go through that in a moment. You could use other party services. You can export out the file, but this is the one that Sage has built into the product as of last year. Basically, the way it works is that you're going to create or modify your 1099 vendors. We just went through that process or talked about that. You're going to create or modify your 1099 transactions. You're going to review your 1099 report. Once you got that ready, then what you're going to do is you say you're ready for e-filing, and you create a Tax Bandit account. So when you go into that form, you'll create a Tax Bandit account. That information will go over into there within Tax Bandits. You'll validate the 1099 information, and then that will do the distribution or submission of the forms for you automatically. There is a fee for Tax Bandit. So again, I don't want any surprises for anyone. So if you're just doing 1099 federal e-filing, you can start seeing the amounts here. If you want to do online retrieval, if you want to do the online retrieval process, this is the fee for those. And then if you want them to send it, if you have anything for your state, there's a fee there. And then the postage by, if you want to have it mailed out, if you want Tax Bandits to send it out, you can do so as well. So, but I want to make sure you're not surprised by any of the fees. This is very comparable. And in some ways, I mean, again, it saves you from having to buy the forms, saves you from having to stuff the envelopes and then put the stamp on it and all that. So it does, it's really it's a nominal price and a nominal to get for all the fee things that they do for you at that point. So keep on going here. Your federal ID number needs to be correct. So for any reason that if you went through this year and you went, hey, I set up a new entity and you didn't know your federal ID number at the time, or you didn't want to enter in, and you put in 99-999999, that will obviously cause problems. So you want to make sure you go into company setup and make sure you have the right federal ID number in there. There's also a box in the multi-entity setup that says issue a separate 1099 per entity. If that's not been checked for some reason, and you want to issue a separate 1099 per legal entity, make sure that box is checked. I will highly recommend making sure that is turned on today or tomorrow. We've had a couple issues where if you have subscribed to Sage Intacct Construction Payroll or the vendor compliance, that it will give you a message saying that you cannot make a change since you've already subscribed to those. The payroll one, we have a solution around. I am still waiting for a solution for the vendor compliance since we just ran into this with a client. They're actually on this call today, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. And what we'll end up doing is we're waiting for that resolution from Sage. So again, go into your 1099. If you're going to do it, and you have to issue a 1099 separately for each entity, and that hasn't been checked, please make sure that gets turned on. And again, that is in the multi-entity setup under your subscriptions, which is under the company module. One of the other things you can do is you can set defaults for 1099 information using something called the vendor type. So, again, grouping your vendors together. These are my subcontractors versus my laborers versus my GCs versus whatever. So I would set up different, my employee groups. So you can create different vendor types and have it default the 1099 information correctly from the beginning. So that's a good step to do. Your 1099 data can be imported into Sage. So there's 3 uploads, just so you know, for vendors. And so there's 3 uploads. First of all, you can upload the vendors' employees themselves. Then you can upload the 1099 transaction updates. And then there's a 1099 opening balance update. Highly recommend you working with a Sage consultant on there. And again, start checking your numbers now. And this way we're not rushing around at the last minute. Make sure you run the 1099 report first, and then if your forms are a little out of alignment, you're going to be like, wait, I bought these forms, they're guaranteed to work. They are, but remember that every printer is different. So when you print out to your printer, the margins, the little non-print areas differ a teeny bit by each printer out there. HP is going to be a little bit different from an Epson printer and so on. So as a result, there are some printer offsets. This kind of moves things down and down into the right a little bit so that you can get the things to show correctly in the boxes. So and what you do is don't print these out on the paper directly. When you're testing this out, just print it on plain paper. Then take that plain piece of paper, put it in front of the pre-printed form, hold that up to the light, hold it up to the ceiling light or to the window, and that way you can just take a look at it and make sure that it's lines up correctly. Instead of wasting valuable 1099 paper, you can just do that. That's how we do checks. In the old days is how we get our 1099s, just hold it up. It's a lot easier. Please keep in mind that if you ever have to send that off to a PDF or so if you send it to us or then it messes up the whole alignment. So again, just take it out of your printer and hold it up to the light with the other form behind it. Sage has 2 places where you can get forms that are guaranteed to work. One is intacct.dsa-direct.com. The other one is forms4intacct.com. So these are 2 places where you can get your 1099 forms. Just again, don't wait. It's like the holidays. Don't wait to the last minute to order them. Get them done now. Don't forget to change the year before printing the form. So when you in the drop down, one of the mistake people leave is it's 2022, or they leave it to 2021. Make sure it's set to 2023. That's important. Don't wait till the last minute. I've said it a couple times. Please do this as soon as possible. And then if you make a mistake, we've all done it. We're all human. You send them out and you realize there's a mistake, you can do a correct, when you click the corrected box in the 1099 printing, and then it will print the new, it will check the box corrected. So if you've sent the wrong 1099, just make sure you do the corrected box at that point. Any questions on 1099s? Everyone has been very quiet. I've seen a couple questions pop up, but any other questions on the 1099 aspects or closing out? Okay, so just a couple last thoughts, and so everyone. So first of all, just get this done ahead of time. Get your account set up with Tax Bandits. Make sure that you have everything set up. If you have any problems, go out. If you're an Ethos Systems client, just go out to the dashboard and put a support case in there, and that will go to our support department. Mark or one of our team members will be taking care of those during the holiday. I mean, starting in January or now, but January, this is the busiest time. Please, it might take us a day to get back to you if we're getting high volume during this time here. Also, it would not be uncommon for the consultant that did your implementation to get back to you possibly regarding this part, since they know your system. Next month, we're having another webinar on January 18th. This one is going to be done by Jay in our team, and Jay is going to be teaching another ICRW class. We did one last year that's up on our YouTube channel. It's kind of like tips and tricks. This one is going to be going over the SQL statements. So if you ever look at a ICRW report and you go to the last tab, you can start seeing the SQL statement that's in there. So this one's going to be a little bit more techie class. It will start going into how to do union joins and stuff like that as well. So linking tables together, or linking reporting areas together. So for those of the, a couple of people have asked for an advanced advanced ICRW class. That's what we're going to be teaching next month. If there are other classes that you guys want us to teach, always feel free to let us know. We've got a kind of a library set up for next year, but always willing to accept input onto the classes that you guys want us to teach to you. Unless anyone has any questions, you are free to go, as they say in classrooms, and appreciate everyone's time today. Hopefully this was well worth your time. Thank you very much.